in a world dominated by noise, where every word spoken is another addition to the cacophony of existence, silence holds transformative power. The ancient Buddhist teachings remind us that speaking less is not just a practice of restraint, but a pathway to self-awareness, clarity, and profound change. By speaking less, we listen more not only to others, but also to ourselves. It is in these unspoken moments that we begin to unravel the layers of our true nature, understanding the nuances of our mind and emotions. Buddhism emphasizes that words are like arrows once released, they cannot be taken back. The Buddha himself taught that right speech is one of the pillars of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech involves truthfulness, kindness, and purpose. But sometimes the most purposeful and kind thing we can do is remain silent. When we speak excessively or impulsively, we risk not only harming others, but also depleting our own energy. Each word carries weight, and the energy we invest in talking could instead be channeled towards self-reflection or meaningful action. Silence, therefore, is not a void, but a space of fertile ground for growth. From a psychological perspective, speaking less helps us manage emotions. It prevents reactive behaviors and fosters emotional intelligence. By holding back from speaking in anger, for example, we give ourselves the opportunity to process feelings, identify triggers, and respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Silence becomes a tool for emotional mastery. Michael had built a life that many envied. As a high-profile attorney in Manhattan, his days were a whirlwind of courtroom arguments, client meetings, and high-stakes negotiations. His weekends were filled with glamorous social events, where he felt the pressure to entertain, impress, and network. His voice had become his currency, his tool for survival and success. Despite the facade of accomplishment, Michael felt an unshakable emptiness. Every word he spoke seemed to drain him. His evenings were spent scrolling endlessly through social media, seeking validation and distraction from the gnawing void within. At home, his relationship with his wife, Clara, had grown distant. Conversations had turned into exchanges of complaints or logistical updates. One evening, after a particularly draining argument with a client, Michael sat in his dimly lit living room, nursing a glass of whiskey. His gaze landed on a book his wife had left on the coffee table, The Art of Mindful Living. He picked it up reluctantly and flipped through its pages until a quote caught his eye. "Silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of self." The word struck a chord. Michael had never considered silence as something active, something that could bring clarity. The idea intrigued him, though he dismissed it as impractical in his busy life. But the seed was planted. A week later, Michael decided to test the concept. He chose a Monday morning, a day typically brimming with chaos. Instead of turning on the news as he prepared for work, he embraced silence. He sipped his coffee in the quiet of his kitchen, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city waking up. At work, he resisted the urge to dominate meetings. Instead of jumping in with his usual barrage of opinions, he listened intently. To his surprise, his colleagues seemed more engaged, offering ideas that he might have overlooked in his usual haste to control the discussion. But the real challenge came during a heated argument with a client. The client accused Michael of mishandling a case, a baseless claim. Normally, Michael would have fired back with a sharp retort, but he paused. He allowed the client to vent while he listened, his silence disarming the tension. When he finally spoke, his response was measured and thoughtful. The client calmed down, and the situation resolved without further escalation. That evening, Michael reflected on the day. Speaking less hadn't made him less effective. If anything, it had made him more impactful. It was a revelation. Encouraged by his small success, Michael decided to deepen his experiment. He searched online and found a weekend retreat at a Buddhist monastery just outside the city. The retreat offered an introduction to noble silence, a practice where participants refrained from speaking, reading, or using technology. When Michael arrived at the monastery, he was struck by the simplicity of the surroundings. The monks moved about their tasks with a serene purposefulness, their faces reflecting a calm that Michael longed for. The first few hours of silence were excruciating. His mind raced with thoughts. What's the point of this? Am I wasting my time? Without the usual distractions of emails, phone calls, or conversations, he was forced to confront the chaos within his own mind. By the second day, something shifted. As he sat in meditation, he noticed the rhythm of his breath, the gentle sway of the trees, the distant chirping of birds. His thoughts began to slow, and he experienced a profound stillness. In that silence, Michael saw himself more clearly. He realized how often he had used words as a shield to assert control, to mask insecurities, to fill the void of loneliness. When Michael returned to his everyday life, he carried the lessons of the retreat with him. He established a morning routine of silence, starting each day with 20 minutes of meditation. This practice became his anchor, grounding him amidst the chaos of his profession. At work, Michael's colleagues noticed a change. He was less reactive, more patient. He became known for his ability to listen deeply, often offering solutions that others had overlooked. His reputation as a leader grew, not because he spoke more, but because he spoke less and with greater intention. At home, his relationship with Clara began to heal. One evening, as they sat together in silence, Clara opened up about her own struggles. Michael listened without interrupting, creating a space for her to share freely. Their conversations became more meaningful, and their connection deepened. Even in social settings, where he once felt compelled to dominate the conversation, Michael found peace in observing and listening. He discovered that silence didn't make him invisible. It made him magnetic. People were drawn to his calm presence, sensing the depth of thought behind his few words. The journey wasn't without its difficulties. There were moments when Michael's silence was misunderstood. Some colleagues mistook it for indifference, while others tried to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. Michael also struggled with his own habits, occasionally slipping into old patterns of over-explaining or reacting defensively. But each time he faltered, he reminded himself of the lessons from the monastery. He viewed these challenges not as failures, but as opportunities to deepen his practice. With time, speaking less became second nature, a habit that enriched every aspect of his life. A year after he first encountered the idea of silence, Michael was a changed man. His professional success had not only endured but flourished. His personal life was more fulfilling, marked by deeper connections and mutual respect. Most importantly, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for years. Michael often reflected on the quote that had started his journey: "Silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of self." Through silence, he had discovered himself not the lawyer, the socialite, or the husband, but the essence of who he was beneath all those roles. One evening, as he meditated in his quiet apartment, Michael realized that silence was not just a practice. It was a way of being. It was a gift he had given himself, one that continued to unfold in surprising and beautiful ways. Michael began sharing his experiences with others, not through lectures or speeches, but by embodying the principles of silence in his interactions. His calm presence inspired those around him to pause, reflect, and embrace the power of less. In a noisy world, Michael had found his voice not in words, but in silence. And in that silence, he had found freedom. Practical steps to speak less. If you're inspired by Michael's journey, here are some steps you can take to practice speaking less and embracing silence. Practice mindful pausing. Before speaking, pause and ask yourself, is what I'm about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? This practice not only reduces unnecessary chatter, but also enhances the quality of your communication. Set silent periods. Designate specific times during your day for silence. This could be the first hour after waking up or the last hour before sleeping. Engage in active listening. During conversations, focus entirely on the speaker. Resist the urge to plan your response while they are talking. Limit social media and digital noise. Silence is not just about spoken words, but also about reducing digital chatter. Set boundaries for your social media usage and embrace moments of digital detox. Reflect through journaling. Use silence as an opportunity to write down your thoughts and emotions. Journaling provides a constructive outlet for expression and helps you process experiences. The philosophical fruits of silence. Silence is not just a practice, but a philosophy, a way of life that aligns us with the natural rhythm of existence. In silence, we reconnect with the present moment, where true joy and contentment reside. We begin to see the interconnectedness of all things, realizing that our words, actions, and thoughts ripple through the universe. By speaking less, we cultivate humility. We recognize that we don't have all the answers, and that it's okay to sit with uncertainty. This humility opens the door to learning and growth. The path of silence is not an easy one, but it is deeply rewarding. Like Michael, you too can embark on this journey. Start small. Speak less today than you did yesterday. Create space for reflection and connection. Watch how this simple practice transforms your relationships, your emotions, and your understanding of yourself. As the Buddha said, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Let your silence speak volumes. Let it guide you to a life of clarity, purpose, and profound inner peace. Conclusion. In a noisy world, silence is revolutionary. It is a quiet rebellion against the chaos, a statement of mindfulness and intention. When you speak less, you don't just change your words, you change your life. Embrace the power of silence and watch as it transforms you, one unspoken word at a time.